Hello and welcome to the GMBN Tech Show. This week we have all the latest from the last round of the EWS, some new cockpit engineering from Bike Yoke, as well as a brand new hardcore hardtail from Norco, plus all your weekly good stuff. Over the weekend, we had the last round of the season, the title decider in Zermatt. Now, there's lots of new bits and bobs ticking out. Most notably for me was probably what looks to be the new Fox 38. It was stickered as a 36, but you saw the likes of Richie Rude riding it. It certainly looks a cool fork. I mean, personally for me and my purposes, a 36 is more than adequate. It's so burly and I feel it's perfectly ample in terms of its stiffness. However, with this new conversation about what we demand from our forks, I'm thinking of e-bikers as much as anything, as well as top riders like Richie Rude, who are just so aggressive. And I think part of being an enduro racer now is accepting sometimes you're going to get the wrong line, but committing to it anyway. And some of the front end compressions is just spectacular. So they've kind of demanded this new fork to basically, I don't think replace the 36, but certainly give another option. And it looks really, really cool. I wonder if that larger internal will also free up a bit of design space as it's at a premium normally. But no, it looks really, really good. It's even got two of the bleed valves on the lowers that you would see on the 40. What that's for is when you're charging really, really hard, you can pressurize your lowers. Now this has a really adverse effect on damping performance. So they spend so long, fine tuning and getting their damping to a place where they want it, only to then potentially pressurize the lowers. So they have these little buttons to release any pressure. So looks really cool. I'd be really excited to see what this turns into. Like I said, I love my 36, but if you had a really burly, 180mm 29er, surely you'd be reaching for a 38. There was also news from Nukeproof. For much of the season, Sam Hill was riding, well, for the initial part, a 27 bike. Then he went to an alloy 29 with revised kinematics, and it looks like the carbon production bike is ready to go. No details on spec or pricing yet, but Nukeproof have been pretty brazen on their Instagram. It looks really cool, it looks really clean, and it goes up 10mm compared to the previous or the current version. I think watching that racing, it looked, the word people use is janky, just so technical, stalling up switchbacks with really, really rough. And it's amazing to think, I believe if we'd had this conversation about what a 29er was capable of a couple of years ago, I would have certainly been saying, for that sort of riding, it's never gonna be at home. So I've been eating a lot of humble pie. It looks fantastic. It looks really, really clean, especially in that paint primer grey they seem to be reaching for. And I'll be really curious to swing a Lego one at some point. I think it looks like a real winner. Although not from the EWS, TRP have finally released their 7-speed downhill specific drivetrain. It's a pretty cool thing. It's been developed with racers and racing in mind. And I think it's really, really good to see another company come into the fray. More competition is probably going to give us better products. TRP, for those that don't know, is Tektro Racing Products. Tektro are an absolutely massive company, and similar to someone like SR Suntour, have a huge share in the OEM market, the original equipment that comes spec'd on bikes. I think it's really cool to see them venture into the high-end stuff, and this drivetrain looks pretty fantastic. It's got lots of things that perhaps the other competitors don't have. Most, if not all, drivetrains now come with a clutch-equipped mech. This one also has what they call a hall lock, named after Aaron Gwin's mechanic John Hall, which basically locks out the whole main pivot. Now this is something that often you'd see mechanics doing a couple of years ago, where they Dremel the B-plate on a SRAM derailleur, the downhill 7-speed short cage ones. Because you don't need any B tension basically, it means you can lock it in one position and it's going to give a really, really consistent shift, whilst also being a lot quieter. Another nice feature is it's got an indicator of chain length, which is, just saves any easy mistakes. I think it looks really great and it's fantastic to have more guests at the drivetrain party. We also have a new hardtail from Norco, and this thing, it just looks fantastic. I think it looks brilliant. It's certainly, to look at it straight away, you can immediately understand the design ethos behind it. The seat tube and the head angle look like they're almost going to converge, about a meter above the frame. I think if you had some bamboo and maybe a bit of sheeting, you could probably make a teepee pretty easily. It is one hell of a silhouette. So 64-degree head angle, which for a hardtail is pretty slack, and a 76-degree seat angle. So like for a hardtail, those are pretty good numbers really. One thing I personally really like about this bike is that it's got an incredibly short seat tube. This is to accommodate the longer drops that are often the reserve of the large and XL sizes, but they're saying, well, why don't we offer that sort of compatibility with the small and the medium frames? I think it's really cool to see. And sometimes when you do see bike brands in their extra small or their small bikes running quite long seat tubes, it does make me wonder about how the riders that are shorter in stature get along with that. I mean, obviously it's a design challenge, but I personally think it would be good to see more brands following Norco's lead and giving that 150mm drop option throughout their whole range. Last but not least in the news, we have a new saddle from Bike Yoke. Bike Yoke are a German manufacturer of components and kind of aftermarket add-ons, and I've got a real soft spot for them. I think their seat posts look absolutely fantastic, and a lot of the things they do to basically cover the gaps or maybe help you modify a pre-existing model of bike from another manufacturer is absolutely fantastic. Some really creative solutions to some fundamental problems in your bike's design. What they got this time? Well, they've actually got a saddle that is suspended to give better vibration damping, a lot more comfortable. And I don't know, I think it looks pretty cool. I would certainly be looking at something like that if I was a gravel biker, or if I was a cross-country rider that was basically doing almost exclusive gravel riding. But what I think is cool, and this is something that I had an experience of when our very own Blake Sampson borrowed my saddle, and he thought, I know what, I'm going to put Henry's saddle back on his bike for him. So what he did is he put the saddle on the bike. He didn't leave the bolt obviously undone. He did it finger tight so the bolt didn't get lost, but then didn't tell me that he'd done it finger tight. So I went riding and it was a bit of a disaster because I didn't have an Allen key. However, it did get me thinking, because when it was only a little bit loose, what it meant was on the flat, it was perfectly great. Well, it was great to pedal. But as soon as I went uphill, the bit of flex in the chassis of the saddle, or the bolt, actually dipped the nose and it made it a really comfortable position. So whilst this is a very cool saddle, I would also love to see an option where perhaps it can, if you put your weight on the saddle, on the nose of it, it can tilt forward whilst having your weight further back. It keeps it parallel to the ground. So that's a lot of conjecture and waffle for me, but I think it'd be really cool to see. But as always, to be honest, I am a Bike Yoke fanboy and I think they do really cool stuff. If you want to drool over some really clever engineering, be sure to check out their website and Instagram. Now it is time for the Bike Cave segment, which is a really cool part of the show that we get to feature your bike caves. So where you work on the bikes, where you store your bikes, where you lock them up. So please don't be shy, we've got an upload a link below. Get involved, it's always a really cool kind of fun segment, and if you don't upload your stuff, then it can't be featured. So please do get involved. And without further ado, we're gonna get into it. So first off, we have from Travis in Alberta, Canada, the lucky devil, and he says he just moved into his first house, very exciting. And he's getting a new bike cave set up, was high on his priority list. Having worked in shops for many years, it's awesome to have my own dedicated space at home to do most of my repairs and maintenance that don't require specialty tools. Excited to spend the winter making sure my Konas are dialed for next season and get my retro cruiser ready for summer pub rides. So that seems pretty good, and just to look at it, it's certainly pretty tidy. Now I'm about to go through a similar process myself of going from an empty garage to a kitted out bike cave. So I really do sympathize with the excitement. I'm in the same stage. But it looks really good. It kind of smacks of tidying up your room when your parents are checking, but that's fine. We'll just assume that you just done it. And it looks really good. You've got your kind of riding kit and lids on the bottom half, which is really, really nice. And also, speaking of lids, I see you have that rack where the lights hung down from. I'd almost be tempted to, next time, if you ever get one type of, say, one brand of peanut butter, for instance, regularly, keep a couple of the jars, say 5 jars, wash them out, screw the lids onto that little rack above you, and then you've got something you can constantly dial and have all your small bits, your cable ends and that sort of thing hanging above you, and it's really, really nice. And I think that's what I'm going to go for in my bike cave. But it looks really light. I love having a light above a workspace. It helps so much. And you seem to be, doubling up on the stools. Nice, comfort's important. And it looks like a decent workbench as well with the drawers and stuff. It looks really, really solid. I even see another sort of shadow board to your right. I only can presume that's maybe a different type of work that you have in mind. But all in all, it looks really, really good. That Kona of yours is a real thing of beauty as well. I think they are fantastic looking bikes. But yeah, thanks for sending them in, Travis. That's really, really cool. Next, we have a submission from Jacob in Germany. And he says, these pictures were taken in my bike cave, which is located in an extension to my grandparents' house. For a long time, probably since it was built in 1888, it was used as a stall for chickens, rabbits, and sheep, and as a workplace for my grand-uncle, who used to do metal work in there. I always find it pretty interesting how a lot of buildings like this in Europe don't seem that old, but when I was living in New Zealand, there was a building called 1865, and it was known as like, oh my God, that's so old. And in Europe, it's not such a big deal, but I'm digressing. Back to the bike cave. The workbench shown in these pictures might be as nearly as old as my grandfather of 92 years, as he said he can't remember a time when it wasn't there. When I transformed this shed into a bike cave, I repainted it and gave it a new worktop, and I tried to move it, which is pretty much impossible because of its weight and the limited amount of space. In this cave, I work on my Nukeproof Mega, a fine choice, my Cube Acid, another good bike, and the bikes of my friends and family, which can be seen in the pictures as well. My latest project is to remove the paint from an old Koga Maita shown in my work stand to try some shenanigans with 2 friends that don't know how to weld. Now that sounds like a lot of fun. I might send in some top mod content in a few days. Good on you. I also just added the Saint brakes to my Nukeproof and looking forward to giving those a try. Please ignore the genius at work sign. Well, you fooled me, mate. I would have given you the credit, but fair enough. It's just my family being sarcastic. It's good to have people that keep you grounded, I suppose. But I think it adds to the atmosphere. If you have any ideas on what to put in the corkboard, I'd appreciate those. It looks very empty, as I only just put it up last week. Well, honestly, there's certainly a lot going on. There are bikes everywhere, which I quite like to see. I like a space that's well used, tidy, but well used. The Mega, speaking of tidy, it looks exactly that. You're almost running 3 tyres there with the amount of protection on that down tube. I don't know if that's for shuttle rash as well as rock strikes, but I think it's really, really cool. And one thing I have noticed, and this is really important to me, and I've got a feeling you'll be on the same page here, but your workbenches are exactly the same height, and that is so important. I couldn't have, it doesn't work, just no thank you. They've got to be the same, and it looks really, really good. I see you've got a compressor and an air gun there. I don't know if that's perhaps to dry out bikes when they're wet, which is also really, really useful. But yeah, a fantastic submission from both people, both Travis and Jacob. Thank you very much. It's really, really cool to see. And if you're sitting at home thinking, well, actually, I've got a really good bike cave, well, get it in, Put your money where your mouth is. Send them in and we will feature it on the show. Thank you very much. Now it is time for Top Mods, which, to be honest with you, is my favourite segment. I absolutely love seeing all the innovative and interesting things you guys send in. This week is from Gary in Wicklow in Ireland, which is, I've heard, got some fantastic riding actually. And he says he refurbished his 6-year-old trail bike and fitted some new fork decals, and he wanted to repaint it himself to make it look like new. Now, cards on the table. When I read that and I hadn't seen the product, I thought, this is ambitious. The little thing about the fork decals, this is good on you for trying. I tell you what, not only has he done an absolutely sterling job on his bike with the aforementioned matching decals. He's done like a Michael Bay video. Look, it's absolutely fantastic. It's like shot, action, ba 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 ba. How cool was that? Now, hands in the air, we did have to change the music for some rights reasons. So we can't show it in the apocalyptic rave sense with which it was intended. I can only apologise, but it's absolutely fantastic. I reckon that was a better watch than Transformers. Now, if top mods is your thing and you think you've got something in your shed or garage or wherever that will be a good submission, please just get it in, don't be shy. We absolutely love them. And honestly, Gary, that really put a smile on my face. It has come off looking absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. This week for Tech of the Week, we have something a little bit different. There's a huge conversation going on within mountain biking about mullet bikes. Now, what is a mullet bike? Do they have their place? I'll let you decide. But we wanted some information from somebody that is deep in the process. Mark is Laurie Greenland's mechanic, and we caught up with him at Hardline to talk about some of the many changes they've made to take that 27 frame and not simply put a larger wheel in the front, but adapt the whole ride. So this is what he had to say.
First thing we found was obviously the front axle got a lot closer to the pedals, so we needed to go up a frame size. Head angle was completely out, so we're running -2 cups.
Yeah.
But then obviously the BB is like far too high, so we had some custom bushings made for the shock to drop it down a little bit. Yeah. And then that still wasn't quite enough, so I managed to find this odd little bottom bracket thing which you saw earlier.
So that's how they did it. It's actually a lot of really smart ways to get around the problem. The Trick Stuff bottom bracket is my personal favourite. Now we're going to be able to feature a full-length pro bike of Laurie's bike at some point, but we do have a lot of content coming out and it needs to find its place. But if you can be patient and hold on for that one, you won't be disappointed. And that is it from the GMBN Tech Show. So thank you very much for watching. Over the weekend, we had some really cool videos coming out, which I'm going to throw you to and I hope that you enjoy them. First of all, we have my Everest bike check, my Canyon Strive, my Enduro bike, how I equipped it for a rigorous day of going up and down a relatively small hill. We also had a track walk with none other Mr. Worldwide Eddie Masters to talk about the setup demands placed on the bikes by what is such a gnarly course. As always guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep the good stuff coming. Thank you very much, I'll see you next time.